My best friend, Jessica, and I were offered two systems. One was the spend and earn system. The other was the Frugal Life system. In my previous life, she chose spending. I chose saving. She got trapped in an endless loop, buying, earning, spending again, until she ran herself into the ground. I stayed invisible, quiet, and became absurdly wealthy. On my wedding day, her parents stormed the venue. They shoved past the guests, screaming as they lunged at me. "You cold-hearted woman. You ruined our daughter." I jolted awake, back to the day of the choice. Jessica spoke first. Her voice carried that familiar, sour exhaustion I remembered too well. "I choose," she said, the corners of her mouth twitching. "The Frugal Life system." A cold, mechanical voice echoed in my mind. Host Jessica has selected the Frugal Life system. Binding in progress. Remaining system, spend and earn. Binding to host Carol. I looked at Jessica across from me. She thought she just handed me a death sentence. "Bind it," I said calmly. Even the triumphant smirk on Jessica's face froze before it could fully bloom. The panic, the fear, the breakdown she'd been waiting for, none of it came. I was as calm as a placid lake. Spend and earn system successfully bound. Issuing novice mission, host must spend $10,000 within 24 hours. Mission success, receive a $10,000 rebate. Mission failure, contract termination. Almost simultaneously, Jessica's system pinged in her head. I knew her novice mission by heart. Earn $1 through acts of saving within 24 hours. Mission success, receive a $2 reward. Mission failure, the system will confiscate the host's most cherished possession. Last time, that mission had driven me to the brink of madness. But now a confident, predatory smile spread across Jessica's lips. She rose from her chair, walked to the window, and flicked off the unnecessary lights. Ding. Save 2 cents on electricity. Next she moved to the water cooler and yanked the plug from the wall. Ding. Saved 5 cents on electricity. She looked at me like I was already done for. "Good luck, Carol." I ignored her. I pulled out my phone, opened a food delivery app, and found the most expensive sushi restaurant in the city. I tapped relentlessly, filling my cart until the subtotal made my eyes widen even though I'd lived this once already. $9,888. Then I went to the tip section and entered $112. Total, $10,000. Jessica watched me, a sneer twisting her lips as she made one last desperate grab for control. "Carol, don't you get it? The rebate has to be spent in the next 24 hours. You spend $10,000 today, you'll have to spend $20 tomorrow, then $40 the day after. Let's see how long you last." I said nothing. I just waited. Half an hour later, a breathless delivery driver arrived, hauling several large insulated containers. I took them from his arms and met his tired eyes. "Thank you for your hard work," I said softly. He blinked, sure he'd misheard. "Huh? Ma'am. What did you say?" "It's for you," I repeated gently, pushing the containers back toward him. "Consider it a small thank you, for you and for everyone working late tonight." Then I closed the door. From the hallway, I heard his stunned, grateful thanks, voice cracking with disbelief. From inside, I heard Jessica's disbelieving shriek. "Are you out of your mind? You just gave away $10,000 worth of food." I turned to her and smiled. She didn't understand. This system was never designed to destroy people who spend. It was designed to destroy people who spend only on themselves. The color drained from Jessica's face. For a second, she just stared, like her brain couldn't process the idea that I could let go of something that expensive without flinching. I didn't explain. Ding. Novice mission complete. Reward of $10,000 has been deposited into the system account. New mission, spend $20,000 within 24 hours. Mission success, receive a $20,000 rebate. Jessica's system chimed too. Ding. Novice mission complete. Reward of $2 has been deposited. I watched her jaw muscle twitch. $2. After turning off lights, yanking plugs, denying herself every comfort for pennies, her grand prize was $2. I'd earned 10,000 with a few taps on my phone. Her eyes bored into me, jealousy so thick it felt like pressure. "Don't get cocky, Carol," she hissed. "This is just the beginning. The more you spend, the faster you'll hit the wall." I shrugged, already opening my phone again. This time I didn't order food. I found a local no-kill animal shelter on a charity app. They were on the verge of shutting down. Their page showed hundreds of cats and dogs, faces pressed against kennel bars, eyes too human with fear, and a long list of overdue expenses: rent, food, veterinary bills. The total outstanding costs came to a little over $20,000. I contacted the director, verified the information, then transferred the full amount. The woman on the other end of the line broke down, sobbing with relief. She kept asking for my name, insisting she wanted to put up a plaque to honor me publicly. "There's no need," I told her. "Just make sure they all get a good meal." When I hung up, Jessica was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You donated it again?" "I did." Her voice sharpened, thin and shrill with a panic she couldn't hide. "You know something, don't you? You came back too. You got a second chance." I met her gaze, my expression smooth and unreadable. Her face went deathly pale. Something deep and primal flickered behind her eyes, terror, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your mind even catches up. Jessica stood there in a daze, utterly rattled, trying to process the reality that I wasn't the same Carol she'd bullied and outmaneuvered last time. I, on the other hand, started planning. Because the reason the spend and earn system crushed Jessica in our last life wasn't the spending itself. It was how she spent. Handbags. Sports cars. Luxury brands with price tags that existed only to flatter the ego. All she did was feed vanity, and vanity has a limit. There's only so much one person can eat, wear, drive, or stack in a closet before it becomes meaningless clutter. When the spending requirement explodes from tens of thousands to millions, you can't realistically burn through it with clothes and dinners. But spending is broader than that. Purchasing services. Funding technology. Hiring talent. Paying salaries. Buying equipment. Securing rights. That's spending too, and it scales. After my $20,000 mission, the system gave me another $20,000. The next mission popped up immediately. Spend $40,000 within 24 hours. I opened my laptop and searched a name I knew by heart. James Hayes. In my last life, I met him at a tech investment summit. After I'd built my fortune, he became my husband, the kind of man who loved me like money was just background noise. By then, he was already successful, polished, charming. But in this timeline, right now, he was still a brilliant but broke student. I found him easily, a prodigy in Kingston University's computer science department, a junior working with a few classmates on a revolutionary social media app. The idea had real potential, but lack of funding had pushed them to the edge. I stared at the photo on the screen. His face still had the soft edges of youth, and something warm eased open in my chest. That was him. I grabbed his contact info and sent a short message. "Mr. Hayes, my name is Carol. I'm an angel investor and very interested in your project. Are you available to talk?" The text disappeared into the void. I wasn't worried. I closed my laptop and decided to complete the $40,000 mission the direct way. I took a cab to the city's largest bullion exchange. In my last life, Jessica tried buying gold too, but she did it at luxury jewelry stores, paying ridiculous markups for the same material wrapped in branding. I walked straight to the counter that dealt in raw bullion only. "Hello," I said. "I'd like to buy gold bars. What's the spot price today?" "Good afternoon, ma'am," the clerk replied. "Raw price is $2,000 an ounce." "Perfect," I said. "I'll take 20 ounces. Exactly $40,000. I swiped my card, signed the papers, and a moment later the weight of the gold settled into my hands, cold, solid, undeniable. Ding. Spending mission complete. Reward of $40,000 has been deposited. New mission issued, spend $80,000 within 24 hours. Just as I slipped the gold into my purse, my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered. A cool, clear male voice came through, cautious but steady. "Hello? Is this Ms. Carroll? This is James Hayes." I met James at a coffee shop near Kingston University. He was younger and thinner than the man I remembered, and when he stood up, he did it a little awkwardly, like he wasn't used to being taken seriously by strangers. "Ms. Carroll? Hello?" "Just Carroll is fine," I said with a smile, taking the seat across from him. He hesitated, surprised by my age, maybe, then sat back down. "Carroll," he said slowly. "You said you were interested in my project?" "I am. I read your proposal. It's incredibly innovative." A flicker of light sparked in his eyes, then dimmed again. "Thank you," he said, voice tight. "But we're out of money. How much do you need?" He lifted 5 fingers, swallowing hard. 500,000. Bare minimum seed funding. To me, that was just a spending mission a few days away, but I couldn't simply toss it at him like spare change. Not if I wanted the future to unfold the way I remembered. "I can invest," I said. His head snapped up, eyes shining with a joy he couldn't fully contain. "Really?" "One condition," I added, my tone sharpening. His expression tightened again. "What condition?" "I want to use that $500,000 to buy the exclusive first rights to all research, development, and patents your team produces for the next year." It was aggressive. Predatory, even. I was essentially buying a year of a genius team's future for a fraction of what it might be worth. James went silent, eyes dropping to his coffee cup as his fingers traced the rim. I was making a bet, on his confidence, and on his desperation. Finally, he looked up. His gaze was sharp enough to feel like a blade. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why do this?" "Why what?" "Why invest like this? You don't exactly seem like the charitable type." I laughed, soft, honest, because he wasn't wrong. Because I need a way to spend money. I wasn't lying. The amounts my system demanded would only get bigger. Shopping and donations would eventually hit a ceiling. But investing, buying technology, equipment, patents, salaries, was a clean, legitimate channel that could grow as big as I needed it to. I was building a road for my own future. James frowned, like he thought I was joking. That was when the coffee shop door swung open. A young woman dressed head to toe in designer brands strode in like she owned the air. She marched straight to our table, looking down her nose at James with pure disdain. "James," she said, voice dripping contempt. "You're still doing this? Begging for investors again? Who in their right mind would fund that dead-end project?" Her gaze slid to me, measuring me up with a dismissive sneer. "Oh, and you found a young pretty one this time? Honey, word of advice, stay away from this broke loser. All he's good for is selling pretty fantasies." It was Brittany, James's ex-girlfriend. The same woman who, in my last life, had looked down on him. Until success made regret eat her alive. James's face flushed deep crimson. His fist clenched on the table. "Brittany," he said, low and tense, "this is my business. It has nothing to do with you." "How does it not?" She scoffed. "I'm trying to protect this poor girl from getting scammed." She pulled a card from her purse and slapped it on the table. "See this, honey? This is what a real man gives a woman. Not a cheap cup of coffee and a pile of delusions." I glanced at the sleek black card, then looked away, unimpressed. Brittany mistook my silence for defeat. Her smile widened. "I came to tell you something, James. I'm getting engaged to Preston Vance next week. You know the Vances, right? Their family is worth hundreds of millions. You'll never be in my league." The blood drained from James's face. I sighed, reached into my wallet, and pulled out my own cards. Not one. Not two. A whole stack, black cards, platinum cards, unlimited cards, sleek edges catching the cafe lights like polished weapons. I fanned them across the table like a winning poker hand. Then I looked up at Brittany, smiling sweetly as her smug expression cracked. "Which of these did you say a man is supposed to give a woman?" I asked. "Are these enough?" Her face went pale, then flushed red, like humiliation and rage were fighting for the same space under her skin. For a second, she just stood there, frozen, watching those cards catch the light. Then her chin lifted again, stubborn as ever. "You're trying too hard," Brittany snapped, but the edge in her voice had dulled. "This is ridiculous." She scooped up her own black card like it could shield her pride, then turned on James with one last desperate swing. "You're welcome," she spat. "When this whole thing collapses, don't come crying to me." The cafe door slammed behind her. Silence rushed in to fill the space she'd taken up. James didn't look relieved. He looked tired. Like he'd been carrying her contempt for so long, he didn't remember what it felt like to put it down. I gathered my cards back into my wallet and met his gaze. "I'm not here to play games," I said calmly. "If you don't want the deal, we stop here." His jaw flexed once. Then he nodded, slow and deliberate. "I'll do it," he said, voice rough. "Your terms. Exclusive first rights for 1 year." I saw something in his eyes as he said it, something sharp and stubborn, like he wasn't just agreeing because he was desperate. He was agreeing because he believed he could make those rights worth far more than what I was paying. "Good. Send the contract," I replied. "My attorney will finalize it today." I stood, already thinking ahead, because my system didn't care about romance, pride, or vindication. It cared about numbers. And my next number had already arrived. Spend $80,000 within 24 hours. When I stepped outside, the winter air bit my cheeks, clean and bracing. I exhaled slowly, watching the cloud of my breath drift away. Behind me, through the cafe window, I saw James still sitting there, staring down at his cheap Americano like it might suddenly explain who I was. I didn't look back twice. I went straight to the city's most expensive mall. Not because I wanted to. Because the system demanded it. I bypassed women's fashion entirely and rode the escalator up to the top floor, designer menswear, polished glass displays, suits that looked like they belonged in boardrooms, not college classrooms. In my last life, James had eventually learned how to wear wealth without letting it wear him. I remembered his sizes. I remembered the way dark colors made him look sharper, the way a well-cut coat made him stand taller without even trying. So I bought him what I knew would fit. Dress shirts. 2 suits. A winter coat. Ties. Cufflinks. The total came to a little over $70,000. I didn't flinch when I swiped my card. The remaining few thousand, I spent on my parents, 2 brand new massage chairs, the kind they'd always stopped to stare at in stores but never dared to buy. The clerk asked if I wanted extended warranties. I said yes. Because spending was spending. Ding. Spending mission complete. Reward of $80,000 has been deposited. New mission issued, spend $160,000 within 24 hours. By the time I got home, my arms were aching from the weight of the shopping bags. Jessica was waiting in the living room. She looked worse than she had yesterday. Her cheeks had hollowed out. Her eyes were too bright, too sharp, like her body was shrinking but her obsession was swelling to fill the space. On the coffee table in front of her sat a bowl of pale, watery noodles. No vegetables. No meat. Nothing but limp strands in a thin broth that looked like surrender. She stared at the bags in my hands, and jealousy flashed across her face so fast it was almost involuntary. Then it twisted into something uglier. "Back from shopping?" she drawled, leaning back like she was watching a show. "I'm honestly impressed, Carol. You're really committed to dying with style." I set the bags down without answering. Jessica kept talking anyway, like she couldn't stand silence unless she owned it. "You know what I realized?" she said, voice sharpening with a feverish kind of pride. "Leaving the apartment costs money. Walking costs energy. Energy costs food. Food costs money." She tapped the table once, like she was delivering a lecture. "So I don't leave." Her smile turned strange. "I haven't stepped outside in 2 days. I eat once a day, plain noodles. I don't drink anything except cheap bottled water. And every time I deny myself something, I win." She looked at me with wild triumph. "My system rewards me for it. I'm making money just by not living." I watched her like I was watching someone trapped behind glass. For her, this was victory. For me, it looked like a slow-motion cage closing around her ribs. "You're proud of that?" I asked quietly. Her eyes narrowed. "You're just scared." Then she leaned forward, as if she could smell fear on me. "What's your next mission?" she demanded. "How much now? 40? 80? 100? I didn't answer. I simply pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward her. Spend $160,000 within 24 hours. Jessica's pupils tightened so abruptly it was almost comical. For a moment, she didn't breathe. Then her face cracked. "No," she whispered. She sat up so fast the watery noodles sloshed. "That's not real." Her voice rose into a shriek. "That's not real. That's a glitch. That's a mistake." She shoved her bowl off the table in a violent sweep. Broth splattered across the floor. Noodles slid like pale worms over the carpet. Jessica stood there trembling, chest heaving, eyes bulging with panic. "Impossible," she repeated, like if she said it enough times, reality would obey. "I've been saving. I've been doing everything right." I stared at her, steady. "There's no mistake," I said. "Jessica. It's not the system that's wrong." Her mouth opened. Closed. And I watched the exact moment understanding sank its teeth into her. The system she'd snatched in triumph, the system she thought was the safe one, the system she believed was the path I'd stolen from her, wasn't salvation. It was just a different kind of punishment. She looked at me like I'd shoved her off a cliff. Then, over the next few hours, the messages started. A flood of calls. Texts that switched from pleading to rage to pleading again. "Carol, please. Let's switch back. I'll give you the frugal system. I'll take spend and earn. I'll spend whatever you want. I'll do anything. You're doing this on purpose. You're watching me suffer. How can you be so cruel?" I didn't respond to a single one. I blocked her. Then I went to work. $160,000 was easy when you understood the loophole. I rented an office space near Kingston University, clean, bright, big enough for a startup team, and paid the first year up front. Lease. Utilities. Security deposit. Furniture. Equipment. All legitimate. All scalable. All spending. When I handed James the keys and the contract, he stared at them for a long time without touching them. "Why?" he asked again, the same question he'd asked in the cafe, like it haunted him. "I told you," I said evenly. "I need a way to spend money." I set the shopping bags, the suits, the shirts, the coat, on the desk in front of him. "And this is just..." "What?" he asked, gaze flicking to the brand logos like they annoyed him. "A celebration," I said, forcing the words to stay light. "And employee benefits." His expression tightened. "I want our partnership to be clean," he said, voice careful. "Purely professional." "It is," I replied. "You're building something big. People take you more seriously when you look like you belong in the rooms you're trying to enter." I nudged the bags closer. "You deserve it." For a second, he looked like he might refuse again. Then he took them. Not gratefully. Not warmly. Just silently. Like he was filing the moment away for later, when he could decide what it meant. That was fine. Time had always been on my side. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm. Spend $320,000. I bought top-tier servers and development rigs for his team. Spend $640,000. I hired elite graduating seniors and paid 6 months of salary up front. Spend $1.28 million. I acquired a small data company and folded their resources into James's project. The numbers climbed like a staircase into the clouds. My spending became infrastructure. And James's project stopped starving. They worked like people who'd finally been allowed to breathe. Within months, the app took shape. A sleek interface. Clean design. An idea built around communities, interest circles, niche voices, small sparks that could finally be heard. James named it Echo. Because every voice, no matter how small, deserved to find something that answered back. On the day of the closed beta, he sent me the first invite code. I stared at the screen for a long time, a warmth settling in my chest that had nothing to do with money. In the meantime, Jessica disappeared. I didn't see her again, not in the hallways, not by the mailboxes, not at the convenience store. Once, I heard a security guard mention the girl in her unit hadn't come out in weeks. Cheap water jugs appeared outside her door. Bulk ramen. The kind of purchases that screamed deprivation, not discipline. He said the apartment had started to smell strange. I didn't go to check. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what that system did when someone worshipped the number more than the life it was supposed to support. Echo's beta was a wildfire. On campus, James became a name people whispered about. Investors began circling like sharks who'd caught the scent of blood in the water. And one day, a meeting request landed on my desk with a name I recognized immediately. Preston Vance. Brittany's fiancé. He arrived with an entourage and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Brittany followed 2 steps behind him, dressed like a glossy magazine cover, but her gaze kept slipping to James, then to me, like she was swallowing regret by the mouthful. Preston shook hands with my staff, asked to meet the real decision-maker, and then walked into the conference room like he owned the air. He extended his hand toward me, too familiar, too lingering. "Miss Carroll," he said smoothly. "I've heard a lot." I didn't take his hand. I simply nodded toward the chair across from me. James began presenting Echo, metrics, growth, retention, user behavior. Preston barely listened. His eyes kept drifting back to me, greedy and lazy, like he thought wealth meant I was a prize to be collected. Halfway through, he cut James off with a grin. "Let's skip the romance," Preston said. "Vance Group will offer $50 million for 50%. The room went quiet. James's posture stiffened. Echo's valuation was already far beyond that. Even conservative estimates made Preston's offer laughable. It wasn't a deal. It was an insult dressed as confidence. James's voice went cold. "Sorry, Mr. Vance," he said. "We're not selling." Preston laughed softly and looked at me like James's words didn't matter. "Business isn't personal," he said. "You invested to make money. Here's an easy exit, cash in hand." Brittany jumped in quickly, eyes shining with that old condescension she used like perfume. "Carol," she said, too sweet. "Be smart. $50 million is more than enough for a lifetime. You're a woman, what do you need more than that for?" I stared at them both for a long moment. Then I lifted my teacup and took a slow sip. Preston's smile tightened. "I'm waiting," he said, voice sharpening. "Are you in, or not?" I set the cup down gently. "Do you know how much I've spent on Echo so far?" I asked. Preston blinked. "A couple million? Maybe 10? "About 2, I said truthfully. Preston's expression flickered with instant contempt. Brittany's lips twitched like she couldn't help it. $2 million, to them, was pocket lint. "So," I continued, calm as ever, "why would I sell my company for $50 million? Brittany's eyes widened. "Your company?" Preston's smile turned thin. "Miss Carroll. Don't be emotional." I smiled. Then I turned my phone screen toward them. "Spend $51,200,000 within 24 hours. The conference room went dead silent. Preston's face froze like someone had hit pause on him mid-sneer. Brittany stared, her mouth parting, the color draining from her skin. James didn't speak. But his gaze locked onto me, sharp, searching, like he just realized there was a whole ocean under the ice he'd been standing on. Preston stood abruptly, chair scraping. "This is absurd," he snapped, voice strained. "You're bluffing." I tilted my head. Why would I bluff about a deadline? He left in a fury, throwing a threat over his shoulder, something about regret, consequences, the Vances not being people you crossed. I didn't care. Men like that borrowed their power from their last name. They didn't know what to do when they met someone who didn't need theirs. After the meeting, James stopped me in the hallway. His voice was quiet, but his eyes were intense. "Is it true?" he asked. "What you showed them?" I didn't confirm it. I didn't deny it. I met his gaze and let him sit inside the uncertainty. What do you think I am? He pressed. A businesswoman, I said. A very busy one. And I walked away, because my clock had already started. 51.2 million in a day was the first time the system's number made my chest tighten. I couldn't just keep expanding Echo blindly. Growth without purpose turned into waste. Waste turned into collapse. I needed a new channel. So I thought of someone I hadn't spared much mind since the day of the choice. Jessica's father. In my last life, he'd charged my wedding like a storm, screaming that I'd killed his daughter. This life, he was just a struggling real estate developer clinging to loan payments and false confidence. His company owned a chunk of half-developed land on the edge of the city, worth something on paper, worth nothing in reality. It had been sitting for years, unsold, unloved, a constant reminder of bad planning. Market value, maybe 20 million. I offered 50. Anonymously. He accepted almost instantly. We met at a hotel to sign. When I walked in, he was glowing, bragging to his lawyer about how he'd played the market, how he turned trash into gold. Then he looked up and saw me. His smile died on his face. Carol? He said sharply. What are you doing here? I held out my hand politely. Mr. Parker. Long time. He didn't shake it. Suspicion replaced his greed like a mask. Is this your stunt? He demanded. You're buying my land? Where did you get that kind of money? You don't need to know, I said evenly. You just need to decide if you want 50 million today. His eyes narrowed. What's your angle? Are you trying to hurt Jessica? I almost laughed. Even now, he thought the world revolved around his daughter. Jessica chose her path, I said, my voice cooling. That has nothing to do with me. He stared at me like he wanted to find a crack in my face, some tell that this was a trap. Then I slid the contract across the table. Sign, I said. 50 million hits your account today. If you don't, I'll find someone else who's happy to take my money. His face worked through a dozen emotions. Greed won. It always did. He signed. As I watched the ink settle onto the page, I smiled faintly. Hope you don't regret it, he muttered, trying to claw back pride at the last second. I stood. The person who regrets things, I said softly, is almost never me. Because I knew what he didn't. 3 months from now, the city would announce a new development plan. That worthless land would be absorbed into a new financial district. Its value would explode. At least tenfold. 51.2 million spent. Ding. Reward deposited. New mission issued, spend $100 million within 24 hours. For the first time, I felt something like real pressure. Not fear. But respect, for just how big this was going to get. And then Echo went public. The launch was a detonation. Day 1, 100,000 users. Day 3, 500,000. 1 week, 3 million. James and his team became the kind of story news outlets loved, young, brilliant, unstoppable. He went from broke student to tech phenomenon so fast people thought it had to be a fairy tale. Girls lined up to meet him. Brands begged him. And Brittany. Brittany finally understood what she'd thrown away. She tried to see James. He refused. She tried again. He refused again. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, she stepped into the street and waved her arms in front of my car like a desperate crossing guard. When I rolled down the window, I barely recognized her. The makeup was perfect. The clothes were expensive. But her eyes looked exhausted. Carol, she choked out. Give him back to me. I stared at her. Back? I repeated. Tears spilled down her cheeks, frantic. If it wasn't for you, he would have come back, she insisted, voice cracking. You bought him. You buried him under money. He doesn't love you. He can't. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I never owned him, I said calmly. But I can tell you one thing. Her breath hitched. He definitely doesn't love you. The words landed like a blade. Brittany stumbled backward, face draining white. I rolled the window up. And I drove away. That night, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice came through, thin, trembling, older than I remembered. "Carol," she said. "It's Jessica's mother." My fingers tightened around the phone. She sounded like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Can you come see Jessica?" she begged. "Please." My stomach sank anyway, because some part of me had always known this call would come. "What happened?" I asked. A sob broke loose on the other end. She locked herself in her room, her mother whispered. "She won't eat. She won't drink." We forced the door open and her voice collapsed into crying. "She's barely there. She keeps mumbling about saving and rewards and you. Carol, I'm begging you. She listens to you. You were her best friend. Please." In my last life, those same hands had swung at me in my wedding dress. Now they were reaching for me like I was the only rope left. The irony tasted bitter. But I said, "Okay." I went to the hospital. Jessica lay in a private room, surrounded by machines that beeped softly like distant warnings. She looked smaller than I remembered possible. Like someone had taken the bright, sharp girl she used to be and folded her inward until she was almost gone. When she saw me, her eyes flickered. For a moment, a spark leapt behind the haze. Her lips moved, struggling. She didn't say my name. She didn't say sorry. She rasped one word, broken and desperate. "Money." Of course. Even now. I stepped closer and looked down at her. "Jessica," I said quietly. "Look at you." Her fingers twitched, weak as a bird's. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes, silent and hot. Her hand found mine and gripped with what little strength she had left. Her mouth trembled, and she tried again, voice barely a breath. "Spend it," she pleaded. "Please. Just spend it." She was finally admitting what she'd refused to understand. If money didn't become life, if it didn't become food, warmth, freedom, joy, then it was just a number. A number you could die guarding. I pulled out my phone and opened my system panel. I turned the screen toward her. Account balance, $51,200,000. Current mission, spend $102,400,000 within 24 hours. Jessica's eyes locked onto the number. And I watched, with a cold steadiness I didn't bother hiding, as the light in her face began to go out. Not all at once. Bit by bit. Like a candle starving for oxygen. Her grip loosened. Her fingers slid from mine. Her gaze turned empty, the way it had looked in my wedding hall right before her parents came for me, only now, there was no rage left to fuel it. Only exhaustion. The monitor's rhythm faltered. Voices rushed in from the hallway. Her mother's sob turned into a scream. I stood there, still, as the room filled with chaos, nurses moving fast, doctors calling orders, her parents collapsing in the doorway like their bones had liquefied. And in the center of it all, Jessica lay utterly still. Her 2 lifetimes, both of them, ended the same way. Not with dignity. Not with love. With her hands clenched around an idea that never loved her back. Jessica's death didn't shake my world the way it would have in my first life. I didn't go to her funeral. I didn't need closure. I had something else to do. The system didn't pause for grief. My numbers kept climbing. And I wasn't going to let my spending become meaningless. So I created a foundation, under Echo's name, with Echo's influence, focused on funding brilliant young people trapped behind poverty and closed doors. Talent scholarships. Research grants. Startup seed funds. The kinds of opportunities James should have had from the beginning. The launch event was small but sharp, cameras, flashbulbs, reporters hungry for a story that wasn't just another app. James stood beside me as Echo's CEO, calm and steady under the lights. And for the first time, in front of everyone, he reached for my hand. His palm was warm. Grounded. Real. "Thank you," he murmured, leaning closer so only I could hear. I smiled faintly. You don't have to thank me. We're partners. His fingers tightened around mine. His gaze lifted to meet mine, and something in it made my chest shift. Not just partners, he said softly. I blinked. He didn't look away. Carol, he continued, voice low, sincere, almost awkward in its honesty, can I pursue you? My heart gave a small, sharp jump. It was earlier than I'd expected, but maybe that was my mistake. In my last life, he'd always been brave with his feelings. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I asked the question that should have come first. You're not curious? I said quietly. About where all this money comes from? He shook his head. No, he said simply. I stared at him. Why? Because I trust you, he replied. I don't think you're a bad person. That's enough for me. Something hot pressed behind my eyes. In my last life, he believed in me the same way, without conditions, without suspicion, without turning my choices into accusations. I swallowed. Then I nodded once. Okay, I said. One word. Heavy as a vow? From that day on, everything changed. He started showing up. Picking me up after work, even when he was exhausted. Bringing homemade lunches like he was trying to prove love could still be simple in a life that had become absurd. Taking me to movies on weekends, sitting in the dark with our shoulders touching like we were just two normal people. Only our version of normal had a timer ticking above our heads. Because my spending missions didn't stop. 200 million. 400 million. 800 million. The numbers became monstrous, too big for toys, too big for vanity, too big for anything that didn't have structure. So I went where the future lived. Clean energy. Biotech. AI. Infrastructure. I invested in everything that could expand without collapsing under its own weight. And with every mission, my empire grew, layer by layer, until it no longer felt like I was spending money. It felt like I was building something inevitable. Echo became the brightest jewel in that empire. A national-level platform. A household name. A valuation that made financial news anchors sound breathless. And James. James went from broke student to one of the youngest names on the Forbes lists. But he never became cruel. He never became hollow. He stayed James. Which was why, the night he proposed, it didn't look like what people expected. He rented out the entire Riverside Ferris wheel. When we stepped into the private cabin, the city lights glittered below us like spilled diamonds. As we rose, the noise fell away until it felt like we were floating through a quiet sky. At the very top, when the city was spread beneath our feet, James took a breath. Then he dropped to one knee. He held out a ring. Not a massive stone. Not a showpiece. A thin band of gold, simple, except the metal was wrapped in delicate etched patterns that looked like flowing script. Code. Actual code. Something he had designed himself. Carol, he said, looking up at me, eyes bright. I know you don't need anything. He swallowed. The only thing I can give you is this. He tapped his chest gently. A heart that's always going to choose you. I smiled, breath shaking. And I reached for him. I do, I whispered. I choose you. We married on an island. No spectacle. No headline circus. Just the sea, the sun, and the people we actually loved. At the reception, I saw them, Jessica's parents. They looked older than they should have. Grief had carved them down into smaller versions of themselves. They approached me slowly, like they weren't sure they had the right to. Then, to my surprise, they bowed. We're sorry, her father said, voice raw. We blamed you before. We were wrong. Her mother's eyes were red and swollen. Jessica, she whispered, then shook her head like she couldn't finish the sentence. We know now, her father forced out. She trapped herself. We spoiled her. We fed her greed and told ourselves it was love. I stared at the white in their hair, the tremor in their hands. And something in me loosened, not forgiveness, exactly. Just release. It's over, I said softly. And it was. The hatred from my last life. The tangled bitterness from this one. It all faded like a tide pulling back into the sea. Later, after the wedding, James and I walked barefoot along the beach. The sunset stretched our shadows long and thin across the sand. He glanced at me. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I watched the waves for a moment. "I'm thinking," I admitted, "what would have happened if there'd never been a system?" He stopped and turned to face me fully. "There is no if," he said quietly. I blinked. He stepped closer and cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheek like he was anchoring me to the present. "Even without it," he said, voice steady, "even if you weren't some mysterious investor. Even if we'd only brushed past each other in a crowd." His eyes held mine, unwavering. "I would have loved you the moment I saw you." My breath caught. He pulled me into his arms, resting his chin lightly against my forehead. "Because you're you," he murmured. "And there's only one of you." I closed my eyes, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. And in that moment, I finally understood something I hadn't been able to name before. The systems had never been the true punishment. Or the true gift. They were just amplifiers. A spotlight. A magnifying glass over what was already inside us. Greed devoured Jessica because greed was what she served. And love, real love, kept finding me, again and again, because I finally chose to spend my life on things that mattered. As if to confirm it, the cold mechanical voice echoed in my mind one last time. Ultimate mission, spend once on the person you love most. Mission reward, system unbinding. Return to a free life. I froze. Then I laughed, soft and breathless, like the universe had just revealed the punchline to a joke that had taken 2 lifetimes to land. So that was it. That was the real ending. Not money. Not numbers. Not an empire. A choice. I lifted onto my toes and kissed James. Not because the system told me to. Because I wanted to. "I love you," I whispered against his lips. And for the first time, it felt like the richest thing I'd ever spent. Ding. Ultimate mission complete. Spend and earn system has been unbound. Congratulations, host Carol, welcome back to your new life.